All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started so we don't get too far behind on time. So welcome back. I hope everybody had a really good, restful break and also completed lots of customer interviews over the break. So tonight we have a guest speaker with us, Dr. Annette Bochenek? Bochenek?
So close,
Close.
Bochenek.
Bochenek, okay. First, we'll do a little bit of a check-in on your customer interview progress, and then Annette's going to show us all of the library resources, and I think there's some other resources available to student entrepreneurs to find some market research to help you. So first, we'll do a little check-in. I have a poll I'm going to launch real quick. Just asking how many customer interviews that you've completed as of today. Have you done any? And then how many have you done? I think that's everybody who's in here that's not a team member. All right. So if I share that, everyone should be able to see there. So like we discussed in the last workshop, which was in November, and it feels like a million years ago. By this point, you should be probably more around like the 50 interviews or so. By April, we expect you to have 100 or more, just so you have lots of validation or invalidation of all those assumptions that you've been making. So if you're more in the 1 to 10, 11 to 25 realm, you might have to just bust your hump a little bit more this semester to get all those interviews. And you want to make sure that they're quality interviews as well. If you're doing surveys and getting data that way, that's totally okay, but you also want to be able to supplement that with actual quotes from customers that you've talked to, so you're really having a conversation with them and not just reading survey data. All right, so one of the homework assignments is to fill out, Lola's going to post in the chat a template that will ask you what your team name is, just describe briefly what your ideas that you're working on to remind us, and then tell us how many customer interviews you've done, the kinds of people that you've interviewed, so the customer segments. That's like not listing the number of them that you've done there, but describe the people that you've talked to basically, and then tell us what insights that you gained from those interviews, and then any pivots that you've made to your business model canvas because of those insights. And also, when you send that in to the BMC email, also attach the most current version of your business model canvas so we can compare it to your initial one to see how you've changed since talking to customers. Does anybody have any problems accessing what Lola put in the chat? Just want to make sure you can download that. Does anybody want to share in the chat or unmute right now to tell us about any interesting customer interviews that you had or any insights that you've gotten from your customer interviews? Feel free to just go ahead and unmute if you want to say it out loud. Hopefully somebody's had at least one really interesting interview.
Oh, sure, I can go.
Awesome.
Sorry, I was eating pizza. I would have done it earlier. They'll probably got some sauce on my. But our interviews, we already have a working prototype based on ours business model, which is just a adaptive utensil for those with movement disorders. We've done some actual interviews with where we just give them our prototype and have them test and get their feel. Like, do they actually want it? Do they see a use of it? And just kind of so on and so forth. On the scale of like trimmers, the main one that we've done so far is just work with the Parkinson's group, which there's about 10 to 20 different individuals with different severities of Parkinson's. And a good chunk of them have their trimmers sold from carbidopa, levodopa. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's their medication. So at the time, they do not see the need for the spoon, but for those that actually do require adaptive living to actually help themselves get around through the day, they normally have somebody that feeds the food to them, but they would like to get that independence back. And that's where we took their opinions to more value than those that don't really have the problem that we're trying to solve, even though they do have a disease that causes tremors, but they already have a solution to help them with that problem. So those that the solution that others are using isn't working, we kind of just didn't necessarily disregard, but we kind of just put that in the fact there's like not everybody in Parkinson's necessarily suffers from tremors that could solve from our problem. So that was an important part, but those that do suffer from the tremors, they told us about what they liked and didn't like about the design. And that's kind of how we got here to this current one with just like a bigger head. I would go into a little bit more details on that, but we've also talked to stroke victims. We're trying to get into some people with cerebral palsy and so on and so forth. But mainly our biggest group that we've been able to tackle is Parkinson's because we had them readily available thanks to a support group that we were able to get in touch with.
That's it. So it sounds like the interviews helped you like narrow down your customer segment a little bit more narrow than just people with Parkinson's. It's whose medication isn't solving the tremor problem.
Right, especially in that disease group. But then like it actually helped us widen our search because some even recommended like, hey, my buddy has suffered from a stroke. He doesn't necessarily have Parkinson's, but he does suffer from tremors and he uses adaptive utensils like weighted utensils. And we actually ended up giving it to him. The son that I gave it to, he said it's probably going to be useless. It's not going to work, but we'll try it just because it's a school project. I used the school name just to get myself in there. And then he used it and he was blown away, like how like he was actually able to comprehend what it works and was actually able to use and eat. Unfortunately, it is a 3D printed prototype, so it doesn't last as long as it would if it was a injection molded prototype, but we got some pretty good results back on that. And so we're definitely going to try to tackle more individuals when it comes to the interview and prototype testing process that aren't just Parkinson's, but probably try to get into some other support groups or other nursing homes with people with suffer from strokes or other neurological diseases that affect their mobility.
Awesome. Sounds like you got some good use tests too. Does anybody else have any insights they want to share before we move on? Let's see any in the chat. All right. Oops. There we go. So just a reminder that I do have office hours available. They're on Thursdays and Friday afternoons. There's like a 2-hour block that I'm available. So if you're stuck or you want to get some more individual feedback, feel free to sign up for those there. If you go to our website, there's also a link to it if you just want to click that. It's on the calendar for the rest of the semester's workshops. Thank you, Lola. All right. So before we get to Annette, I just wanted to kind of go over this bubble chart that I wanted to just explain before we get into it so you know kind of what numbers and stuff that you're looking for when you're going through this market research. So a bubble chart represents your market size, like how big is the opportunity for your product or what you're working on. So this is something that you'll definitely want to include in your pitch deck in the competition. And you'll also want to be thinking through tonight when Annette is presenting and walking through your own research about how you're going to fill in this bubble chart with the information that you find. So just to walk through an example, we talked about the value prop of Peloton in our last workshop. So we're kind of sticking with that to go through here. So the total available market, oops, it's on here. The total available market it represents the whole demand for the product. So for Peloton, it's the entire amount spent globally on exercise equipment. So that's all kinds of exercise equipment, like in the gym and also in-home exercise equipment. And then the serviceable available market it's a segment of the TAM that you're in. So Peloton's SAM is the amount spent annually on home gym equipment in the US. So it's like a subset of the larger total available market. And then their target market specifically, and we were thinking this is what their target market was when they first started out. So for them, their initial target market was home exercise bikes. Lola said they've now expanded to having treadmills as well. I think they might have some other stuff as well, like a HIIT machine or something. But they figured they could start with just the exercise bike, which is a subset of the home gym equipment. So showing this bubble chart shows how normally there would be dollar figures in there. I didn't actually look up the market reports to try to fill in the numbers, but so yours will look something similar to this. You're just going to have to figure out what your TAM, SAM, and then your target market is specifically. But this will show investors who are seeing your pitches kind of how you can grow after you get your target market. Like what is the amount spent, if there's billions of dollars spent annually on home gym equipment, they can see how you could grow from being in the smaller target market of bikes to the whole market of all the exercise equipment. So any questions about that before we get to our guest speaker? And Lola we have a PowerPoint slide template of the bubble chart. So you have it kind of while we're going through some of the market reports together. So you might be able to start at least filling in a little bit of information. All right. There's no questions. We'll move on here. So like I said, we have Annette with us from the parish library, and she's going to give a little presentation about all the resources available, and then we will break out into breakout rooms so you can start looking for information on what you're working on specifically, and then Annette can bounce around to the different rooms and provide some support. If you could, just to make it easier for me when that time comes, if you can rename yourself in the participants to your first name and then your team name. I made it to where you should be able to put yourself in breakout rooms, but that didn't work last time. So if you have your team name in your name, I'll be able to move you to the appropriate room if you have more than one team member here tonight. All right, and Annette, you can share your screen.
All right. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you and to share some of these resources with you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you here. Make sure we can see it. Excellent. All right. Ordinarily, I would have loved to see you all in person and to show off some of these resources in person and certainly within the library, but we'll do the best we can with a digital presentation. And the good news is that a lot of really great resources are indeed available to you digitally through the parish library. And so with this presentation, I'll briefly go over some different market research tools that you do have access to as Purdue students. assignments, as well as a variety of other resources that are also potentially worth consulting beyond Purdue that are publicly accessible and available to you. This information actually comes from largely the Entrepreneurship Library Guide or LibGuide that is available again through our library website. I'm happy to share these slides as well at the end of the presentation if you would like, just so you can have access to the different links and screenshots that you see along the way here. So overall, with Purdue Libraries, we really do have an excellent variety of sources for information to consult with, whether it's in the field of business and entrepreneurship, and certainly beyond that. I'll spend the bulk of this presentation talking about some of the different databases that you have access to. There are lots of different uses for them and purposes for them. And the good news is with some of these databases, even though they are really useful in from a business standpoint and a business perspective, there's a lot of crossover in terms of where else they are also useful among other majors even. So there's also a variety of different data sources and library resources that I'll get into. I mentioned briefly library guides or course guides that might also be helpful to you. And there are also different remote support options as well. So if you're ever stuck along the way or have questions about a particular resource, someone from Purdue Libraries is available to help you out remotely, whether it's through email, through our chat support system, etc., where we're definitely there to help you make sense of the different resources we have available for you. So it was really interesting to hear about some of the work that's already going on, definitely with the use of the spoon and Parkinson's and stroke victims. I think that's a really interesting tool, and I'm sure there are a lot of other really fascinating tools and ideas that you are working on. That all really lends itself well to the idea of primary research, which it sounds like you've been doing with different customer interviews and interactions, which is definitely excellent in terms of coming up with an idea for your business model and your product or the service that you have to offer. And really one of the crucial aspects of bringing an innovative idea to the table is considering what it is that makes that idea so special and so different and ultimately so impactful. And your goal is to ultimately prove that not only to yourself, but to anyone who would potentially say back your business financially and support it further. So you really want to be able to stand behind what it is you are offering and prove why it is so special. And a great way to do that is to point to research and show that there is a need for the product that you are developing or the idea that you have in mind, and show that it would indeed make an impact and address a certain gap out there in terms of what is available and what is not. And so there are a lot of different approaches in terms of how you can do that. You can look for another company that maybe has been successful in putting out maybe something that parallels the idea that you have, or finding a new trend that's emerging and that is especially popular. Finding a niche in a larger market. So if you are creating something that is part of a larger market, figuring out what the gap is, what needs are not being met in the market, and where your idea would wind up filling that gap. Certainly some customer analysis, figuring out maybe where customers are, basic information about your target market or target group of customers, finding articles about different business practices. So you'd be tapping into ideally different news sources and reading just the literature out there about what different businesses are doing, and ultimately showing that people are invested in this industry. You're proving that there is an interest in this area, that this is an industry worth exploring and worth contributing to, and your idea certainly would help that industry along. So I mentioned you'd want to find an industry that's growing. Ultimately, you might even wind up finding an industry that doesn't have much competition or maybe has weak competition. And in other cases, you might find a brand new market for an existing product and figuring out a way to make it appeal to yet another target group of potential consumers. Additionally, you can also think about different consumers who are perhaps underrepresented, or maybe their needs are not being met, and figuring out where those gaps are again, and where the industry is not serving those individuals, and potentially fulfilling that gap or that need with your idea, or creating a completely new market by combining markets, which is also something that has been done in the past. So there are a lot of ideas in terms of how you can potentially prove a need and an importance to your idea. And one of the great ways to go about doing this, in addition to primary research and conducting your own research, is to look into different secondary market research tools. And again, there's a range in terms of what is available to you through different secondary market research tools, and Purdue has access to many of them. But the key or core elements among different secondary tools will involve an understanding of how the industry operates. You'll want to be able to broadly understand basic information about your industry and how it functions, what influences the industry internally, which is typically the market. So having an understanding of the market group, and that's where our market research will come in, and also what influences it externally. So the consumers, what are they doing that impacts the industry or impacts the market ultimately? So having a good understanding of that should be able to help you along as you go about researching the market for your idea. And again, with secondary market research tools, they're going to range in terms of type and in terms of what you see being offered that is considered as secondary market research. There are examples of internal information. So if I were, say, researching a company and I happen to have access to that information, that might help me in the long run with my research. It could be things like sales invoices, records, etc., any documents that are internal. More popular, I think you'll find, are different market research firms and the different databases that they connect with. So there are tools like IBISWorld, which we will see a little bit of, Frost and Sullivan, also something we'll cover, Mintel, and many, many more that are out there. Another field that is interesting to think about too is the idea of trade associations. So in addition to the resources that you'll see Purdue Libraries offer, it's also worth thinking about different trade associations, trade periodicals and journals even in some cases, to get a better sense of where your idea fits in the industry and where it could potentially impact the industry. So for example, if I were like manufacturing my own like soda drink, it might be worthwhile for me to look into the different trades associated with that. And one of them happened to be American Beverage Association in my research. So that would be maybe one potential outlet that I would connect with. And again, there are many more out there that you can think of, certainly relating to, I think, that idea, but also the products that you have in mind, and seeing again what trades they could influence or impact. There are also, in some cases, NPOs or nonprofit organizations that might correlate with the idea that you have. A lot of these can fall under the umbrella of professional associations or even foundations. Sometimes these nonprofits do link up with certain groups to promote a product or an idea that aligns with their mission and their goals. And there are also different commercial publications out there that are worth considering. Different magazines, say, for example, in terms of food and hospitality, if you were promoting something that goes that route, and many other different types of publications. And finally, government data. There are a lot of excellent government sources that are publicly available to us. Things as basic as the census, which even though we think of it typically as a survey more so for populations, but it's really a rich survey that captures so many different elements, not only about populations and demographics, but a variety of other pieces of information relating to the current population. And often you'll find that secondary market research employs existing surveys. Typically they're about a year old and they're taken from primary research. So in other words, they're aggregated and analyzed after a researcher has completed a variety of these surveys. And for the most part, they're usually informed by the different consumers for a product. So typically you'll find these listed as consumer-based surveys, or surveys that again have directly dealt with dealing with a consumer group or a target group for a given product or service. So one of the tools that you'll want to look into, I think, first would be different market research reports to see information about the broader market in which your idea fits. And I think some of the different tools here that I've highlighted here would be Frost & Sullivan, BCC Market Research, and marketresearch.com Academic, in addition to a host of many, many more options. But I think these top three, for me, I find typically to be the most useful in terms of gathering information about a market and really accessing those different types of market research reports. We have, as an example, with Frost & Sullivan, there are a lot of things that you'll notice some of these databases will share in terms of what they offer, but in some cases they'll deviate, and one database might offer something unique that the other one doesn't. So it's always a good idea, I think, to research the market within at least one database and definitely compare it to maybe several other databases too, so you have a more informed kind of understanding of what is going on in a given market. So with Frost & Sullivan, they are a business intelligence portfolio. They also offer access to industry insights, analyses, real-world statistics, and various research results. They also provide different company and technology and demographic and industry-related information. So there's, again, a lot there. And there are a lot of different industries that they cover as well. So this is just a sampling of some of the industries they offer. Luckily, I think maybe some of those products that we discussed in this talk already may be represented in some of these industries. So if you are working on an idea that falls into these, I would definitely recommend looking into Frost & Sullivan just to get sort of an understanding of the market that you are creating something for. This is just a screenshot of what you would see in Frost & Sullivan as an example. So typically I would use that kind of global quick search feature and type in, say, maybe the name of the industry that I'm working on, or maybe the name of a product or an idea I have, or maybe something similar to that to see what's been done before, and just to see what different results will come up. Now, granted, you'll get probably a pretty huge list of different results, so you do have different tools that will help you filter the results that you have, and you can arrange them however you'd like and filter them further, be it by year, be it by what the outlet is, what the document itself is, whether it's coming from a periodical or something else. So you can definitely hone down on that list and come up with a shorter, more manageable list of sources as well. BCC Market Research is another great market research tool. Like the previous one with Frost & Sullivan, you do have access to different industry analyses, but here you do have market research reports, but also newsletters and information for competitive business intelligence. So just to kind of compare a little bit, this is what BCC market research would look like. So you can see when you sign in, the interface is a bit different, but they do have access to some free resources here. And they have some neat tools, I think, that really bring front and center some popular or trending topics. So you have a blog feature here. There's a blog that's maintained for BCC research, but there's also a trending feature, which will allow you to actually see different trends that are happening across a different range of reports. There are also different chat features too. So that's more so for help if you have an inquiry through BCC, you can get some support. But there's also, interestingly, some podcasts available too on the subject of various markets and market research. So here I would also wind up using the search for market research tool that you would see as at the top there, and see what information you can find in relation to what you are developing. So you could, for example, put in the name of an industry or the name of a product. So say, for example, if I were maybe working on something for like pet supplies, I could type in like dog food, for example, and see what comes up and what industry that would relate to. And from there, you can analyze it further and really look into those different market research reports and see what is being said and what the data shows in relation to your idea. There's also marketresearch.com Academic. This one is nice because it does contain a very thorough, comprehensive list of different market research reports. And there are also a variety of markets and industries represented. So I know Frost and Sullivan is pretty similar to this in this regard. You still get those market research reports. There are some industries that they focus upon, but I think that marketresearch.com academic is even broader than Frost and Sullivan in terms of the different industries represented. So I would definitely look into them as well. These resources are indeed free to students, by the way. I did just see a chat flicker over. Yeah, everything that you see here is accessible to you as a Purdue student. So you should be able to get into those through our parish library website. And yes, that is a really nice perk because you, as Purdue students, you do have access to these sources that are really helpful. And once you do graduate, you would lose access to these sources through Purdue. Now, there are other ways that you would be able to continue on accessing some of these databases, whether it's through your local library and perhaps some other databases as well that are represented through Indiana State Libraries, a consortium of databases. I can talk a little bit more about that as well. But yes, everything you see here is accessible. And this is just the screenshot from marketresearch.com academic. So I think the key here is in terms of accessing these databases, you just want to make sure that you are accessing them through the Purdue Libraries website. So from Purdue Libraries, you'd look into the databases and you'd be able to find the ones that we're talking about here. If you just do a Google search for marketresearch.com academic, that's going to take you into the pay for it version of the site. So as long as you're going through the Purdue University kind of portal through their libraries page, you should access these without issue. So this is marketresearch.com academic. You will see here there is a keyword search tool. Similarly here, I would type in the name of the industry and see what sources that I find. There's also an advanced search option as well. So if you want to add additional search filters or features to your search, you can feel free to do that. I think with the keyword search, if you use that, you're going to wind up getting more results. But typically with advanced search, like the more filters you put on, the fewer results you'll get, but chances are they'll be more targeted to what information you're actually looking for. If you were to scroll down further down on that same page, you'd also see there's a browse by topic option as well. So you might be able to see maybe a certain area in which the product or the idea that you are developing actually does fit. Typically, yeah, I'll look into browse by topic as well if I don't want to use that keyword search feature and just see what I find broadly listed here already. But again, feel free to use either. There we go. And now the idea of industry reports is also something that's pretty helpful. This helps you get a better overview of what is happening in the industry, whether it's major or minor factors, and how the industry is being impacted as a result of them. And there are a lot of different factors that you can consider when it comes to really analyzing what's happening in the industry. A really great idea is to look at the different types of news articles perhaps that are coming out, different innovations that are occurring within the industry, certainly economic conditions and influencers and indicators, as well as the idea of government regulation. If the government is regulating something pretty heavily, or an industry in particular pretty heavily, that's going to have an impact. So you're definitely going to want to look into that and to see how government regulation has influenced the particular industry. And there are, again, quite a few really good databases that you have access to that can help in this regard. And IBIS World, the first one here, this is probably one of my favorite ones to go to in terms of industry reports. Here, there's information on over 700 US industries within the economy. So it's a pretty vast representation of different industries that are out there within the US. And there are different industry reports available in correlation information with them. And each one is about like 35 to 50 pages in length. There are abridged versions as well that are also available. And again, this is a really fabulous piece of data to have access to as Purdue students. I mean, some companies will pay thousands of dollars for information like this, and this is available to you via IBIS World, which is, again, definitely worth looking into. So this is what IBIS World would look like. So here, less focusing on the market, more so on industry here. So you could, again, type in the name of the industry, type in the name of the idea that you have in mind, or maybe even the name of a company or a competitor, and look into information about that and see what reports you will wind up generating as a result. And again, there's a lot of really great information here. IBIS World, as mentioned, is usually my go-to when it comes to industry reports. There's also Plunkett research. This one will also get into different industry trends and statistics. It crosses over into market research as well, but you'll also get listings on different pieces of business intelligence and company lists. And this one I think is a really nice alternative also to IBIS World. The look of it is of course a little bit different since it's another database, but at heart some of those elements do cross over. There is still that research and industry tool. We saw in IBIS World, you could also type in the name of a company and get some information about it. This is pretty similarly the case here in Plunkett research. You could also alternatively research a company and just get information about that particular company and their executives, what they're doing. So like I said, there's some crossover with these databases, but chances are you might find something that you didn't see in another database. So it's always good to consult with several as you go about researching, whether it is market research, industry research, etc. There's also S&P Capital IQ. This one is really nice, I find, more so for financial information. So this one includes a variety of information relating to company finances or industry finances. They get into credit ratings, transactions, a lot more than that. And they do generate lists of companies, markets, executives, so different things that we do see represented in the previous two industry report databases mentioned. But here they also include an Excel plugin for data analysis, which can be a pretty nice tool to have. So you'll find financial data, research and news, but also you could, if you're a heavy Excel user and you like to log statistics that way, that Excel plugin is a really attractive feature I find with S&P Capital IQ. So this is just a screenshot of what you'll see once you sign into Capital IQ. If you are a first-time user for this one, there's a little bit of like one-time setup that you have to do. I think you have to register for an account, and all the information is there on our library website as to what you need to do for that. But you'll be able to have an account, and within S&P IQ, you'll be able to conduct different searches relating to, again, company financial information. And you can also, because you've created an account, you can save some of those searches. You can create customized lists that will be saved and ready for you to come back to if you need. So that's kind of why it asks you to create your own login and sign in with them specifically. But again, if you're interested in company financial information, some of that statistical data behind their finances, I think that this is a really good source to look into as well. We mentioned too the idea of looking at different articles that are essentially news articles and could also better inform you about the industry. And now, of course, you could go into different news outlets out there, but I find that there are some really good business-related databases that focus on business news specifically. So it's a really nice way to get some good information in relation to a certain business or a company or a product, and what is being said about it in the media, and especially in terms of business related news. And there's two in particular that I really like. There's Business Source Complete and ABI Inform, but also it's still worth mentioning again to consider trade publications. Again, Purdue wouldn't have like a database relating to to a trade publication so much. That's something that you'd have to access in another way, but it's again worth looking into to see what's being printed or published within a certain trade journal or a trade publication or magazine about perhaps the idea you have, or about a certain company or a certain trend that's happening within an industry. But in terms of the databases, I mentioned Business Source Complete is a nice one. This one has different news-related articles relating to business and management, marketing, etc. There's a wide variety of different kind of subfields within business that are represented here in Business Source Complete. There's over 3,800 different publications, most of them actually peer-reviewed journals in different business fields, and the majority can also be full text periodicals. So you can have access to full-on articles. If you see an article there that is of interest to you, chances are you should be able to read the whole thing and fully see what's going on in that article. So this is a screenshot from Business Source Complete. This one, you would wind up working with the keyword search here again. So you could throw in your key terms again and do a search and see what types of results you have. Alternatively, again, we have that advanced search tool as well. So that will let you add in additional filters. So just as an example here, one thing that I typically do with Business Source Complete, I would put in the names of my keywords. So whatever it is that I'm looking for, like the product, the company, the industry, whatever. And I would choose typically the advanced search option. And within advanced search, I like to be pretty current in terms of the different articles that are coming up. So I'll usually limit it to something like maybe the past 3 to 5 years in terms of a publication date, just so I don't get a really outdated source. And that'll kind of tighten up the number of different search results that I will have that I have to go through and read through for my research. So I think limiting by date or publication date, publication year rather, is really helpful. Some other advanced search tools that I typically include would be ticking off a peer-reviewed box. You do have the option to separate out the peer-reviewed sources and specifically look at them if you want to. That's something that I tend to prefer. The other thing too, sometimes if I run into maybe a particular industry or product that's really international in terms of its impact, sometimes I'll start to see different articles in different languages. So I'll just choose the English option for myself and wind up kind of separating out those results, and again, kind of taming that number of results that that do come up within this Business Source Complete feature. So again, you can see in addition to being able to search there through keyword or potentially through author, you can also look into different pieces of company information. There's industry profiles here, there's company profiles, market research reports. Once again, this is yet another database that has a lot of these different facets represented within it. But also interestingly, there are business videos too. So if you want to look into maybe some other forms of media relating to maybe the industry or the product that you're working on, there are some different video options that you could look into and see if there's anything out there maybe that has been maybe filmed in relation to a company or product, whatever it is that you are researching. And here you'll see in the upper right hand corner, you do have the option to sign in. And again, if you're a first time user, there'll be a little bit of registration to do here, but it's sort of the same purpose as we saw in the S&P Capital IQ. You'd be able to save searches, maybe save certain articles that you saw along the way, and those will be associated with your login. So the next time you sign in, you'll see those articles and whatever work you've done saved there, so you can kind of pick up from where you left off with your research. There's also ABI Inform Global. This is also a really nice management database with a variety of different articles in relation to business news, definitely management techniques, company news, corporate strategies, etc. And there are a lot of pieces of advertising, marketing, economics, HR, so on, articles represented here, as well as information on over 60,000 different companies and more. So again, another really robust resource in terms of locating different news sources in relation to the industry. So this is just a screenshot for the ABI Inform Global tool. Again, the look of it is a little different here, but some of these search features are similar to what I mentioned in the previous database. You could, as in the previous one, enter in some search terms and keywords that you want to search for, but also you still have that advanced search option. You can still potentially browse by maybe different topics that are listed there, but also some key features that I typically check off when I use advanced search in the previous database. They're actually front and center for me already in ABI Inform. So by default, just with how they're designed, they offer the option for you to check off that you want a full text article, or maybe you want to access peer-reviewed articles. So that's something that I would specify. And typically, if I see the option for a full text article, I will usually just check it off to save myself the frustration. I'm not sure if you've had the experience before. Maybe if you're looking in a database and you find an article that's really great, but then you find it's only a snippet and it's not entirely available there. You have to do some extra searching and extra digging to be able to look for a full text version of it and to read the whole thing. So to save yourself the trouble, I would typically check off that full text option. Another thing that you might be doing already actually is looking into competitive landscapes and competition in relation to your idea. So definitely while you are doing your research, you do want to kind of be one step ahead of the game and think about the competition that you might be facing with your product, thinking about what other competitors are doing, for example. What are some factors that are affecting the industry or potentially the market at this point? Are there different geographic factors even to consider? What technologies in particular are impactful at the moment? Did any current events happen that are shaping the industry or impacting it in some way? And so you want to have that in mind and bring those major players and major competitors to mind, as well as how an industry is impacting their work and their strategies. And again, I think S&P Capital IQ could be a really nice one to look into for something like this. I think financial information is always really great to reference. There are other databases too. We have Mergent that also kind of delves into those financial tools, as well as DNB Business Browser, among many, many others out there that are available for you. And earlier I mentioned too the use of government sources. The government itself contains a really robust array of different resources available to you, whether it's consumer expenditures. We also have data.gov, which is a huge repository of information relating to just a wide variety of data in terms of consumers and markets. There's also the Small Business Administration, or SBA. They'll focus on, as they're labeled, different small businesses and the different services and products being offered there, as well as different resources geared towards even starting a small business and maintaining a small business, as well as different government resources like the white papers. And there's a range of different publicly available market research tools. So you as Purdue students would have access to, again, the databases that I mentioned. And those are available to you as students. They're not available necessarily to the general public to access freely like you do. For us, typically you'll wind up having to log in with your Purdue, it might be your boiler key or your student ID. There's usually some kind of barrier to it. But there are also a lot of really great publicly available market research tools to consider. And one really nice resource is to check into your local library, wherever it is you're from. It doesn't have to be Indianapolis per se, but you can also look into your home library and see what resources they have that could be beneficial to you. So I'm someone who actually comes from a public library background, and quite a few of these are ones that I used actually back in the Chicago area, and were being used heavily by different entrepreneurs in the area who were looking to expand their business, to grow their business, or to better market some of their products and services. So what you see here is actually a sampling of some tools offered through the Indianapolis Public Library, just as an example. And if you haven't already done so, I definitely encourage you to maybe get a public library card wherever it is you reside, and to use those resources, whether it's in West Lafayette or elsewhere. You'll see some of these resources are reflected back in local public libraries, and these are really great tools too. So offhand, I think a lot of these are actually different business news related sources. There's Reference USA. That's one that's really nice for company profile information, getting information about company trends and different executives, as well as different pieces of news about them. Mergent Online, or Mergent Intellect, as it's sometimes called in the public libraries. I think that's a really great tool for, again, financial information about companies, as well as some different company profile pieces of information, et cetera. There's a lot here that you can really delve into. And again, trade associations will have their own resources that they will make available, usually through their websites. Some of them might be private in some cases, but for the most part, a lot of these are publicly available. So if you look into different trade associations that might connect with whatever product or idea that you have in mind, there might be some really great resources there for you to look into just through the trade association website alone. And potentially, if you're not finding a lot of information through the trade association, it might not be a bad idea to even just contact them directly and ask for some information that they might be able to share. So definitely looking into trade associations could further advance your research and inform your understanding of different markets and industries. And there are also some other places that you can look into as well for secondary market research. And these are even beyond Purdue and beyond the public library. A lot of these are available to you and are maybe sources that you've already looked into at this point. But there's the Pew Research Center, which is a huge site that will cull together a wide variety of data and surveys in relation to politics, media, news, business, social trends, so on. So you might be able to find some really good resources for your product or your idea there. There's also Google News. So I think we're familiar with being able to Google information, but I'm just specifically using Google News and looking for different trends maybe that arise, or different articles that are being published in relation to maybe a company, an industry, a market, whatever your interest is. As well as different tools like Thomas.net. They offer different competitor analyses, supply chain information, and Prosperity Now, which is another website that happens to have data on household financial health and racial economic inequality. Some of that data is actually paralleled back in the US Census or census.gov information as well. There are also, again, many more here. You could use some of the other Google tools available. A variety of different universities and research institutions will have information that is potentially freely available. There's white papers, Statista, different trade publications, and also interlibrary loan. So definitely, if you maybe really want to access a certain physical resource, if there's like a really great book out there that is only available in physical form and Purdue maybe happens to not have it, or your local library doesn't have it, chances are we should be able to get it through interlibrary loan, and you would have access to the item that way. So again, there's a lot of different ways that you can access information. And again, in particular with government data, there is so much that is out there. In fact, we have a whole separate LibGuide on government data if you would like to consult that as you go about researching for your market or for your industry. And that link is listed below here. So I mentioned too the Census Bureau that conducts more than 100 different different surveys and programs every year. It is the nation's largest survey. So there are household surveys, but also there's a vast array of other information aside from the usual household survey. And some of that includes business surveys, which will also be a really nice tool for you to kind of get to know annual retail trade, et cetera, and looking into different household surveys and pieces of information as well. I mentioned data.gov. So here you can see just a sampling of some of the topics that they have to offer you. So if one of these topics does correlate with the industry or the market that you are researching, you can definitely explore it further through data.gov. And again, that is also freely available to you. And there are many, many more. The government obviously represents so many different facets and areas of business. So there are, just to name a few, there's the USDA, the CDC, the Office of Trade and Economic Analysis. We talked about the Small Business Administration, and many, many more features that are, again, covered through the US government's website. And you can also look into local government as well. So if you are specifically looking at the market, say within Indiana, there are also local government pages that you can consult, like Hoosiers by the Numbers. So hoosierdata.in.gov would be kind of the local version, as well as international government if you want to go the opposite route and expand even further and look at international options. That is also a possibility for you as well. There's also Data USA. That one focuses on information relating to different industries. You could focus in on given locations, occupations, even a variety of different things and features like different products and services. Again, the list goes on and on here, especially with the government data tools that are available to you. And so with that being said, there's really a broad range of different tools offered to you through Purdue and certainly far beyond Purdue. And there are a variety of ways that we can continue to assist you as you go about your research process. I know right now we're for the most part working digitally and accessing a lot of these tools digitally and remotely, but we do have remote support options for you as well. I am actually one of the liaison librarians for entrepreneurship. So this is one of my focus areas to really help people with. So if you ever have any questions about some of the resources mentioned or want to be in touch as you go about your research process, my email address is available to you. If you do actually look at the library guide for entrepreneurship, you'll see my contact information there as well. You will have the opportunity to schedule a one-on-one appointment with me if you want to, if you feel like you need some extra assistance with your research, or you have maybe more questions that could be better addressed sort of virtually face-to-face, you could definitely do that one-on-one appointment and schedule it through the library guide there. You'll see my picture and a schedule now option available. And alternatively, you can also contact the parish library. So if I'm not working it directly, someone on chat might be able to help you out with your questions, or you can also just call the library as well, and our number is listed. So with that being said, thanks so much. This is the link again to the Entrepreneurship LibGuide. I will throw it in the chat as soon as I stop sharing my screen here. But I do want to thank you all for attending this workshop. I hope that some of these tools will be helpful to you and might have inspired you to maybe start looking for information within them already. But yeah, it is my understanding that I think we'll be diving into some breakout rooms and doing some work already. So I'm so happy to be able to connect with you in this way and to help you along with your research and check in with you.
Thank you, Annette. Does anybody have any questions for her before you start diving into the reports and looking at it yourself? Feel free to just unmute and ask any questions you have. No questions? All right, so I don't know. Oh, there's a question in the chat. I think, Annette, you were going to share your slide deck at the end here.
Yeah, I can do that. I'll go ahead and do that right now.
Okay. All right, so we only have one group, I think, that has more than one team member here. So we can break out into breakout rooms if you'd like to go and work privately. If not, feel free to, when Annette drops the link in there, if you want to start searching through any of the databases, any of the things that she showed you to try to find the information you need to help you fill out that bubble chart, or just anything you're interested in finding out more as it relates to your idea. You can stay in the main room here and just unmute yourself, share your screen if you have questions for Annette or for Arnold or I about anything. If you would like to go into a room, I have assigned everyone to a room and I will open them up. I think it'll give you the option of going to it. I turned off the option to automatically send you there, so hopefully it doesn't do that. So if you want to go into the room, you can. If not, feel free to stay here.
Annette, is there a typical place you might send students first? Like in terms of one of the resources or one of the databases?
Yes. So as mentioned, I would lean towards IBIS World probably first in terms of doing some of that preliminary searching. Then the other big one, gosh, let me see which one that was. Yeah, I'd say IBIS World is the big one. For BCC is another one. So it's BCC, I think Source Complete was the name of that one. I tried to do it so that in each of the groupings of like kind of the top three, it's the ones that I use most often. So whichever you see listed first for me is kind of the higher priority in terms of how I usually search. Yeah, and you just want to make sure that you're going through it through the Purdue LibGuide or through the Purdue Libraries website, just so you don't hit a paywall and and are asked to provide any payment information. You should be able to access all of these.
And this may sound like a silly question, but do you get a lot of requests from entrepreneurs for help?
Yeah, usually it's relating to market research. I think that's usually the most popular question I get is where can I find information about like my product or about certain company. I think typically it's that. Usually I think that the runner up to that is just news articles as well about an industry. So those are typically the ones I'd get from entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And it overlaps too with some of my other liaison areas. Like one of the other ones I do is agriculture. And a lot of times they're looking for similar information. They're coming up with a product in relation to that or exploring technology.
Mm-hmm. In terms of if you're interested in tracking a company or whatnot, my first thought is that was like a Google keyword or whatnot.
Yeah, gosh. So I think within Google you could set up an alert.
I think that's what it's called. Yeah, it's like Google Alerts. That's another thing that you can look into if you just want to get like pinged every time something comes up in terms of a news article. Is there anything that the library has in one of its databases that would be similar? Good question. I don't know of any offhand that alert me. When something new is posted. I wonder though, there might be. I'll have to look into that. Just curious. Yeah, I know that'd be an interesting feature since the Google one's used pretty heavily. I know some people even just set that up with their own name just to see what they're being tagged up and what they're coming up under.
A quick question. When people usually pitch this type of research, so for example, I want to look into some private companies. I don't know how they're getting these numbers for private companies, but do people usually want to know where you're getting your numbers from? Like, are we supposed to cite our sources?
I would think so. I think it always helps just to know where you're getting that information from. So you could say that the database that it's coming from to kind of legitimize your numbers and where you're getting that.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think it depends a little bit too on the database that you're using. If it's something like IBIS World and you're citing a report, I think you would cite IBIS World directly. There might even be like a little citation feature there potentially. But if it's something like a news article, usually it'll tell you like what outlet it's coming from, and then that's what you'd cite, and then that it came from this database through this source. So kind of varies in terms of what you're looking to cite.
I gotcha. I feel like the market I'm looking at is kind of obscure, so I'd have to pull from like multiple databases to get a full picture.
Sure.
And I
Why
guess
don't you tell her a little bit about your idea, and she can throw.
Yeah.
yeah, so the idea it is a parking marketplace, so particularly for events. So kind of like a Purdue football game, there's a lot of residential parking. People could sell parking in their driveways, and then there's buyers who could buy that parking. And so, for example, the closest thing that does that right now is a company called Spot Hero.
Sure, yeah.
And so they're a private company. So I was able to find something on them in the S&P Capital thing.
Great.
I have no idea how they're getting that number though, considering they're private, but they have some numbers on them. And then the kind of market is this event parking market. So not really garages. So there is like garages and lots seem to be covered by IBIS World. But sort of this market that there's a concert, there's a football game, a lot of people sell parking with cash. And so how to quantify sort of this event parking market is what I'm trying to do. And there's a lot on, I think, regular parking, but this other market seems harder, at least so far for me, to find numbers on.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, Spot Hero came to mind for me too. I'm wondering if they have any competitors that you can look at. I know Spot Hero is the one that I would have used pretty heavily.
You can always do. I was thinking you could do a bottoms up of. Is there a way to figure out how many residences are within X distance to Ross-Ade Stadium, for example?
Yeah, so actually the United States Postal Service actually has a really cool thing where it lets you look at the neighborhoods anywhere and the average income, average residence, because they have a service where you can send mail to everyone in a certain area. And so
there you go.
That's a nice way to just see, yeah, everyone, how many people are around Ross-Ade, how many properties, what is the income of the people around Ross-Ade and things like that.
But you can also then estimate, okay, from the number of residencies, you could say, okay, well, roughly each residence has 2 spots. And you know the going rate is $20 a spot for a Purdue football game. So just around Purdue, you could say, okay, this was this one market. You could do that with a couple others and just start to, it's really a little bit of a guesstimating.
Gotcha. Okay.
You could pick the arenas, same thing. You know, whether you did like the Bankers Field House or couple other places.
Gotcha.
But this also goes to if you're very specific about your target market. Like, for example, are you going towards, rural areas like West Lafayette, or is it something where more towards, okay, downtown Chicago, something around Soldier Field or the United Center? Right, those would be very different markets where there might not be very many residences near some places and a lot more in others.
The focus is actually rural like Lafayette because the big companies don't have any presence there.
Yep.
So it's easier. The market, I guess, is open is the idea. Whereas like if I go to Indy or if you go to Indy, less so, but like Chicago, Spot Hero has a much larger presence there. And so it's that way I don't have to compete with them. And I mean, there is a market, like it's not, it's not every day, but there's roughly 8 home games a year. I forget how many basketball games, but for example, that would be the market at Purdue, but then I don't know, there's like 100 colleges. I think college campuses make the most sense.
Yeah.
Initially, at least.
Because you can probably then figure out how many, almost like how many Division I football and basketball teams are there in areas under a population of like 1 million.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Right. You can also guesstimate it where it seems like most of the Big Ten fits your category.
Yeah, no, the Big Ten is also there's like average attendance is ridiculous at Big Ten football games too. Like,
yeah.
Purdue's like 60K, Ohio State and them are like 100K. So there's a lot of people who go to these games.
Yeah, actually, even if you did the SEC, I think most of those schools are in smaller towns, and their football stadiums are twice as big as Big Ten schools.
Yeah, Alabama, Ole Miss, all of them are.
Yeah.
Kind of a similar setup.
I did throw a link into the chat with some other like competitor parking apps. So if you're looking for some other ones to look at aside from Spot Hero, maybe some other ideas there.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
And I have a question. So for this link that you found, was this something that you happened to know? Or
No,
how did you find this is kind of my question.
This one I looked on Google for this one since I use Spot Hero pretty heavily back in Chicago, and I was thinking about some of the other apps out there, but Spot Hero is the big one. There's a lot of like different parking like metered apps, like since we don't really have like the put a quarter in kind of meter. Some of them are like tied to an app already. So I wondered if any of those have taken the Spot Hero approach too and are also kind of pulling from other spaces. And maybe have spots in garages. But yeah, so I just did a quick search.
Okay.
But yeah, I think from there I would maybe start plugging some of those different competitors into like an IBIS world or looking for like company profile information and just see like how that compares to Spot Hero maybe.
Yeah. No, it is for something like this where you're doing something unique. It requires a little bit, I'll say a little bit of a strategy. Like you said, it's like, okay, somehow you got to Google to find competitors, and you got to use a different database to look up those competitors. And then, because if you just type in parking into an IBIS world, you're not going to get exactly what you're looking for.
Right, yeah, you need to know what you're looking for.
Like you were saying, something different, and then you got to start putting things together.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit of finessing. You might have to use a variety of sources before you find exactly how to look for what you're looking for. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Emily, are there a number of people in breakout rooms?
Yeah, Freedomware is in their room. I think that's the only one. I think we always lose people when we start doing activities, especially when there's breakout rooms. But this time I gave it as an option. They didn't have to go in there, but so yeah, it's just those two in there. I could close the room and have them come back.
I think that they pushed the wrong button. Was expected to push like join, and they push leave.
Yeah.
No.
Thanks for your positivity.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry, I think there was some echoing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm currently trying to access the Business Source Complete.
Okay.
And that just looks like it's a bunch of research-based articles. Is that what this one is?
Let me pull it up on my end and see. I think because there might be some different versions of Business Source Complete. Let me just pull that for you really quick here.
Would you be able to share your screen and like walk us through how to sign in properly?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if I'm signing in the right spot because I'm signing in using my Purdue credentials.
Yeah, that should be.
I thought you had mentioned that we had to set up like or create a new account for some of these.
Yeah, not for Business Source. You shouldn't have to just access it. Let me just share my screen really quick. I'm just pulling it up here. Okay, so this is going to be, this is what I put in the chat. This is that like entrepreneurship lib guide. So this should look familiar. And then from here, I went to market research, and then I think it's towards the bottom here. You'll see Business Source Complete. So for me, when I click on it, it takes me right into it. And this is where I'd be doing the searching. Are you able to get this far, or are you?
Yes, so I'm
Okay.
here and I typed in education. Just, I mean, that's a very broad
Okay.
field, but
Just do that really quick here. Yeah, and were you able to get this far, just get some results?
yes.
Okay.
And so I clicked on, I think it was number 2, impact evaluation.
Okay.
But see, these look like just research articles. Like this one took place in Belgium.
So Lena, how about this? What are you looking for?
Well, I'm really just trying to get a sense for what exists. Like I don't even know where to begin with this, because what I'm trying to do is create resources to supplement a school system, right? And so this is something that I want to be able to integrate into every classroom, so it'll be supplemental material. And I already know some current and existing competition, but I'm not really sure how to even begin doing the market research on that. Besides like talking to educators and parents or guardians.
Yeah, so can you tell me a little more about like the supplementary tools that you have in mind?
So some of these will look like a curriculum that teachers can use, or parents or guardians of like homeschooled kids, that they'll be able to use in joint with whatever content they're currently using. Like they'll have a set of curriculum and then ours will supplement that, and it's supposed to kind of integrate into whatever they're teaching. And then there will also be like kits. For example, you can get like a science kit, and it'll have certain experiments that they'll be able to do that goes in line with the curriculum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I might have to do some poking around to find the actual like vocabulary for that, but something like science kit or yeah, like curriculum or instruction kit, those might be some good search tools to look for. But yeah, with Business Source Complete, this is going to be like research articles, I think, for the most part. You might want to maybe look in different, gosh, I'm trying to think about the best way to go about this. You could look into maybe some education specific databases and see maybe if there are articles there. So this one, you might have to step out of the business articles and see if maybe something exists in maybe an education database through Purdue Libraries. Otherwise, you could look from here. It's just going to be a little more digging, I think, for something that's less of like a scholarly piece. I think you're looking more so for news as opposed to like academic journal, I think, work for something like that, right?
So is all of the databases that you've shared, that's all just academic journals that are being published? I thought there were
no, yeah, there are
I thought there were numbers.
Yeah, I think it was ABI Inform is the one that I was going to recommend to you for this. Let me just jump out of here really quick and pull that up. One moment.
It might be helpful, Lena, if you like search who you've listed. I know we talked, so I know like the competitors that you've listed or other similar tools like Khan Academy or something like that. That might be a good search term as well.
Okay.
But it also might help, Nina, if you can phrase it like, what question also are you trying to answer?
Like specific question that I'm answering?
Like what question are you trying to answer in terms of getting data for? You know, I'm trying to figure out the size of X market, or I need to know what other competitors are out there. If you kind of ask, it's almost like if you ask Annette a question, then she can figure out where to go to get the answer.
I see. Okay, well, I mean, I guess it's based on really what's needed for us to be able to be like submit a competitive presentation come March. So I thought what would be needed is, for example, like how big the market is, how many schools are out there, what are the districts, things like that, which I could probably be searching, I guess, more generically and use Google for stuff like that. But I thought the databases would be more, I don't know what I'm exactly asking, to be honest.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just put in a link for ABI Inform Global. I think that one might be a better one for you as opposed to like Business Source Complete. I would give this one a try. This one might get into more so like the news articles. I just did a very brief search on like education kits and got some results there. But you can feel free to play with the keywords there.
Yeah, I think something I would add is that one of the challenges, and that you made a little bit of reference for, is figuring out what the keyword is that you need to search. Because sometimes you can't enunciate, you can't, like, and this is actually a perfect example of going through or not sure. But a little bit like Emily said or what Annette said is like if you do either a Google search or if you went into one of the databases and typed in your competitor, like for example, if it was Khan Academy, then you can see all the different reports that Khan Academy is listed. And then it might say, oh, this term is called, supplemental education material.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go get that report. So a lot of times, I think it can be dizzying, or you can feel very lost where you don't know the keyword, you don't even know where to start. And so just typing in some keywords or typing in some of your competitors can get you, honed in a little bit.
Okay.
I'm also seeing the learning enhancement kit as a potential search term.
Okay. But what I guess just from doing an initial brief search, and I need to spend some more time doing this, it seems like they're just research articles, right? So when you say that we're getting a report, what exactly is contained in that report? Because as a research scientist, like we publish, we submit publications, there's data involved and things like that. And then we draw conclusions from that data. But market research, I was assuming, kind of spanned the full market and would talk about the impact that say Khan Academy's resources had on the market. Am I misunderstanding what these reports are? Sorry, I have no idea. This is a new field for me, so I'm still learning.
No worries. Yeah, so with like Business Source Complete and like ABI Inform, those are more so like the databases for like articles, for news articles, that kind of thing. When we talk about like the reports, like an industry report or a market research report, those are going to differ from like the articles in that, say for an industry report, you're going to get information about the industry at a glance. You'll get information about industry performance, outlook, products and markets, the competitive landscape. So those are the features that are typically in a report, and some things that you might even find in like a market report, for example. So anything like analyzing, say, a target group or a target demographic that you have. So I think that's kind of where the difference is, whereas an article will like kind of more generally speak about a certain subject, about something that's happening, whereas a report will give you more of an overview. There'll be like visual components to it as well.
And the
I see.
databases where they should look for a market report would typically be either IBIS World or Frost and Sullivan as a starting point. Is that?
Yeah, I'd say IBIS World, definitely to start with. That's the one that I usually begin with.
Yeah.
So I think, Lena, I think you're looking for like the numbers to fill out your bubble chart, right? So like how much is spent on,
Yes.
Like supplemental educational materials annually in the US or something. So
start with
yes.
IBIS World and try typing in what was the keyword that Annette mentioned, like education supplement or education enhancement, something like that. And see if something comes up.
did we lose her?
Did we lose Annette?
Maybe she accidentally clicked out.
I'm having a delayed internet response over here. I'm trying to get to IBIS World. What's the best way to get to IBIS World? Is that through that Purdue portal?
Yeah, go to the one that, what is
Okay.
it, her second to last link?
Yeah. the guides.lib.purdue.edu. Like if you go that, then I think IBIS World is one of the first.
First links.
Yep, it should show like on that homepage.
And then by going through the Purdue portal, then that'll connect you through, like, that'll make you internal versus if you just type in IBIS World in your browser.
Okay. Yeah, okay, it's coming up. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, my laptop just decided to do a software update, so jumped on another one. So timely, but yes, yeah. So hopefully, yeah, ideally I would start with IBIS World when it comes to like the industry reports, just to get a feel for the market. But yeah, if you're looking into information beyond that, beyond like market trends and competitors, if you just want some like more current like news related information, or just to see what's being published on the subject, then you would go into those different sources for business news or business articles.
Okay.
Articles, yeah. So
right.
There is a difference between the reports and the articles.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Arnold, this is the new kitty I told you I got.
Oh.
Well, you kind of can see him. He's exploring the house now.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, he's 4, and I think he's probably put on like a pound since he's been at our house since Saturday. So he was pretty undernourished, I think, at the shelter, and he's making up for it now. All right, so we have the Freedomware team here. Did you have any questions for Annette before we go? We're out of time, so if you had any questions for her while she's here, feel free to ask away.
Not at the top of our heads. We seem to find some medical articles that were able to help us, but I feel like with our field, it's kindly widely accessible as long as we are through Purdue. It's what it seems like, but we really appreciate what you have showed us. I didn't see like hardly any of those search engines before, so thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. If any questions do arise, and for all of you, please feel free to email me or set up a virtual appointment if it would be helpful.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, and let me just share my screen real quick just to. So the homework is to complete that customer insights worksheet that Lola put in the chat earlier, and then also the bubble chart, and just send those to the BMC email and we can provide some feedback. If you're completely lost on the bubble chart, you can either set up office hours with me if you're just confused about what needs to go in it, or if you need help with the actual finding the reports and things like that. Like Annette said, you can reach out to her to set up a virtual appointment with her. And so our next workshop is February 3rd. So in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about revenue streams. All right. If there's no other questions, then everybody have a good rest of your night and enjoy the inauguration celebrations tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Bochenek. It was really valuable what you brought. So thank you.
Oh, glad to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.